The biggest leak in Pokemon history happened a few days ago, and with it, there are very obscure facts I decided to include in this creepy iceberg. GameFreak has been known for including unsettling Easter eggs, theories, but also unintentional elements such as glitches that turn out to be extremely creepy. In this iceberg, we'll explore the creepiest up-to-date information about the Pokemon franchise. Welcome to the iceberg of creepy and disturbing things in Pokemon.
Say my name. Iceberg. You're goddamn right.
Ghost Pokemon. We have seen cases in which people become Pokemon, such as when Ash became Pikachu, or that weird tale in which a boy became a Kadabra. But there's another way to achieve this end, by dying. Although Pokemon are separate creatures from human beings, ghost Pokemon are unique, as some of them are said to have been human before they passed away and became a ghost. Look at Gengar's Pokédex entry for Pokemon Moon. It apparently wishes for a traveling companion. Since it was once human itself, it tries to create one by taking the lives of other humans. Another popular case is that of Yamask. Each of them carries a mask that used to be its face when it was human. Sometimes they look at it and cry. This raises the question, were all ghost Pokemon human at some point? Under what circumstances does a human need to pass away to become one? It also makes me wonder if this happens with all species of ghost Pokemon, or if some of them are naturally born this way. Some of them are a real threat to humans, as Pokemon such as Dusknoir captures radio waves from the world of spirits that command it to take people there. Lavender Town Syndrome. Pokemon was able to send over 600 children to the hospital due to the rapid flashing lights that happened in a matter of seconds. If they were capable of doing this with a Pokemon episode, what could they do with their games? Children and teenagers who typically have better hearing can often detect frequencies above 17,000 Hz, while many adults might not hear sounds higher than 15,000. This phenomenon would have caused children to be affected by certain sounds present in the Lavender Town theme, something we would know as the Lavender Town Syndrome. Thousands of children in Japan would have fallen victim to these high-pitched sounds, pushing them to end their own existence. This of course refers to a creepypasta, so there's no harm in listening to the melody of the noble purple town. Supposedly, the Lavender Town theme in Japan was different from what we got on this side of the world. Here's the alleged music. If the normal theme is creepy, this goes beyond, especially due to the high-pitched sounds. However, both American and Japanese themes are exactly the same. Unknown radio transmission. Imagine you're in the middle of the night, there's no one home, and you sit in a dark room barely lit to read a book while you listen to the radio. Suddenly, the broadcast gets interrupted, and instead of music, you listen to sounds beyond our reality produced by entities that were present at the beginning of time. If you go to the ruins of Alph and tune to a specific frequency on your radio, you'll listen to the unknown producing mysterious sounds. What is it that these ancient Pokemon are trying to communicate? I've talked about this Pokemon in other Icebergs, and I've come to the conclusion that they might actually be the 1000 arms that Arceus used to shape the world, especially considering how they're present in the creation of Palkia, Dialga and Giratina both in the games and in the manga. They also resemble a type of biblical angel known as Ophanim, wheel-like creatures with eyes whose main objective is to guard the throne of God. Buried alive. The Pokemon Tower's boss is Cubon's mother Marowak in the shape of a ghost. However, this wasn't supposed to be the original idea. A battle would have taken place on top of the tower where a tombstone lied. When interacted with, the player would get the following message: "I'm trapped and I'm lonely. So very lonely. Won't you join me?" A battle would start. The player would face an enemy with the sprite of a decaying corpse trying to crawl out of the ground. It would have been programmed to have a Muk, a Gengar, and 2 white hands, one of them being the same one that the girl talks about outside of the Pokemon Tower, and that can actually be seen on Red's shoulder in Pokemon Origins. There wouldn't have been a victory script for this battle, meaning that the player would end up losing and facing this game over screen. Of course it had to be a creepypasta. Ghost Girls. Ghost Pokemon are common in the Pokemon world, but when it comes to ghosts in the shape of people, that's another story. There have been several human ghosts, including a butler and a small girl in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl and Platinum. There's no information about who these people could have been when alive, but apparently they are trapped within the old chateau. In Pokemon Generations, Cheryl and her Chansey fall victim to the same ghosts, although it's discovered that the Ghost Girl is actually a Pokemon. For Generation 5, we have the Ghost Girl from Marvelous Bridge and the Strange House, whom we'll talk about in more detail later in this Iceberg. On the second floor of the Lumious City's Fighting Dojo building, a floating Hex Maniac will show up behind the player stating that they're not the one, similar to the Hex Maniac on Mount Pyre's inner section in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Talking about the Gen 3 remakes, as we enter Phoebe's room, we can see an empty chair. When we speak to Phoebe, the camera angle changes to a view from said chair, and it also resembles as if somebody who was sitting there stood up and approached the trainers. However, before this happens, we can see a small girl that shows up for a split second. Again, we have no idea who this character is. Generation 7 also has a ghost girl that appears at night at the trainer's school, but she gets her own Iceberg entry we'll talk about later. There's a girl called Paula who asks the player to deliver an old letter to an adult man named Frank. What's strange is that the man recalls playing with Paula as a child, which of course gives us a hint of who Paula is in reality. Frank explains that they stopped talking because she hid the fact that she was ill, and then he had to move to another city. When you go back to where you first met Paula, she'll be gone, but if you press A where she was, you will find a Reaper cloth. This is one of the few instances, if not the only one, in which you will find an item on the ground that doesn't sparkle in Generation 8, and with the absence of the dowsing machine, that could be a problem. Finally, Generation 9 doesn't give us a ghost girl per se, although in the dark version of the League Club room, there's a painting titled "Until the End of Time," where a girl holding a bayonet will sometimes blink at the player. Sabrina in the anime. Sabrina's childhood is quite tragic. As a toddler, she had already developed psychic powers from her father, but to a greater extent. She ended up destroying the mansion she lived in and drove her parents away. She even turned her mother into a doll, although it's not known exactly for how long, as when Sabrina turns Misty and Brock into dolls, her mother was one already. One of the creepiest things is a puppet that Sabrina holds, a playful yet dangerous part of her personality that led Ash into a cliff where he was barely saved by Bulbasaur. On the other hand, we have Sabrina herself, a powerful emotionless gym leader ready to punish anyone who stands in her way. I always wonder how Gary beat her, but in reality he never did because he didn't get Sabrina's badge as shown in his badge collection right before his match against Giovanni and Mewtwo. I guess the only way for other trainers to beat her was to have a ghost Pokemon, but at least in the anime, back then they were so rare that not even the Pokédex was able to provide any information about a ghost like Haunter. The Regis. It is said that an ancient civilization used to worship the Regis Pokémon, but apparently somebody feared the power of this Pokémon and decided to seal them away. The key to release and awake them is probably one of the most cryptic processes in the Pokémon world, a sign that they really didn't want to have anything to do with this Pokémon. There's something else people could have feared, and many of you might already know, their cries. Hypno. If there's a Pokémon with a really bad reputation, that is Hypno. Countless times, this Pokémon has been reported to hypnotize children in order to take them away. One of the most popular incidents is that of Lostel, a young girl who got lost in the berry forest in the Sevi Islands. It's possible that it's Fire Red Pokédex entry that describes an incident in which it took away a child it hypnotized refers to Lostel, but considering we've seen this psychic Pokémon doing the same in the anime, or that there is official Pokémon merchandise that depicts Hypno holding hands with hypnotized children, it might be that it's not an isolated incident. While it's possible that not all Hypno are evil, there have been cases in which these Dream Eaters have been caught acting immorally. In Pokémon Sun and Moon, Captain Ilima finds his Machamp on the floor after being attacked by a trio of Hypno in search of a nugget to improve their pendulums. There's also Hypno's Lullaby, a creepypasta-based song that tells the story of how Hypno fools kids into following it into a cave. Holocaster. Holocaster comes from the words hologram and to cast, but taking into account that Lysander, its designer, wants to wipe out most of the world's population, it makes me wonder if Holocaster is a play on a word that describes mass extermination. In Japanese, the words are even more similar. Arceus event in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. This event in the Gen 2 remix is as close as we can get to seeing Arceus creating the universe. If you happen to have an Arceus caught in the Hall of Origin or one given away in an event, you can go to the Ruins of Alph and Arceus will take you to the Sinjo Ruins, a place where the cultures of Sinnoh and Johto merged. On the mystery stage, Arceus will proceed to create one of the Pokémon that were born at the beginning of the universe, Palkia, Dialga and Giratina, in what's one of the most mind-blowing cutscenes in Pokémon history. If this is what happens when Arceus created the Pokémon of myth before even time existed, I can't imagine how it was when it created the universe itself. Lumiose Station Message. I'm going to go for help, wait in the usual place. This enigmatic message is present behind a TMV timetable in Lumiose Station. There's no mention anywhere in any Pokémon game that hints at who exactly left the message and what its real meaning is. What kind of help did the person in question need? Could it have been a medical emergency? Zombie Pokémon. As if we didn't have enough with ghost Pokémon in Lavender Town, how about zombies? In Pokémon Adventures Volume 1 Chapter 13, Red goes to Lavender Town and ventures into the Pokémon Tower looking for Blue, who's been lost for 2 weeks. Inside, he comes across a Psyduck that looks normal, but it turns out to be a zombie Pokémon, and not the only one, as we can also see a Lickitung, a Slowpoke, and a Slowbro in the same decomposing state. Psyduck, however, is the creepiest one, as we get to see its skeleton and one of its eyes popping out of its eye socket. Lost Silver. A player turns on his Game Boy Color, loading up a used Pokémon Silver cartridge he bought at a game store, but something's off. The game skips the intro sequence. The character has no name, but starts with maxed out money, all 16 badges, a completed second generation Pokédex, and not a single extra minute to add to his playtime. In his party is a Cyndaquil named Hurry and 5 unknown that spell out Leave. The player finds himself at Bellsprout Tower, but strangely the central pillar isn't moving as it normally does. He proceeds toward the stairs. There's no light, but Hurry knows the move Flash. After using the HM, the room turns red. As the player walks south, the screen gradually darkens. He soon comes across a signpost that reads, "Turn back now." The player is prompted to agree or disagree. He chooses yes, and a message appears. Hurry has fainted. Hurry is nowhere to be found, and the party is replaced by a new set of unknown. This time, they spell out, "He died." The screen returns to the overworld, where the player now finds himself in a wide room filled with tombstones. Suddenly, the character falls through the floor. He's missing his limbs, and he appears to be crying blood. The player follows a path with unresponsive NPCs on the sides. At the end, he encounters Red, standing silently, waiting to battle. Red sends out an overpowered Pikachu with a sorrowful expression. The player's only option is to send out a shiny Celebi that knows the moves Perish Song and Pain Split. With not too many options to choose from, Celebi uses Perish Song, dooming both Pokémon to faint in 3 turns. The text ominously declares that both Pokémon have perished. The player reappears at home, but now the sprite is colorless, floating like a ghost. Venturing out of bounds, he stumbles upon his former self, who delivers one final message: "Goodbye forever." The screen fades to black, and a message appears: "Rest in peace." The player is once again in the white room with tombstones, nowhere else to go. This is one of the most infamous Pokémon creepypastas. If you feel curious, you can download the ROM to experience this eerie journey firsthand. Pokémon Creepy Black. We're not talking about the Pokémon Black you're familiar with, but about a Game Boy bootleg version of Pokémon Red. In this game, you were able to use Ghost from Lavender Town as a Pokémon, with the move Curse that would kill any Pokémon or trainer that you find in your path. The author of the story asked themselves what the purpose of this bootleg is. Some people think that it questions the player's morality, as there's a part where the player has the option to kill the trainer they fought, even though it's not mandatory. At a later point in the game, the player will see a screen that reminds them of all the Pokémon and trainers they decided to use Curse on. The player grows old, and this time it has to fight Ghost, but unable to use anything else but struggle, the attack will fail, resulting in the player's demise. Gastly is a dead Cloyster. Cloyster is a water-ice type Pokémon that is known for being able to use moves such as self-destruct and explosion. Considering that this Pokémon is right before Gastly in the Pokédex, this led people to believe that Gastly was the deceased form of a Cloyster. The Gastly line has been linked to several Pokémon that are alive, to put it in a way. Gastly has been connected to Cloyster, Haunter to Voltorb as a possessed Pokéball, and Gengar as the shadow of the fairy Pokémon Clefable. Hall of Fame Corruption. The missing no glitch needs no introduction, and for sure it was a lot of fun to experiment with. However, fun was over when the player decided to check their Hall of Fame. Ends beta design. We know that the final product we get is never what was initially envisioned, as in most of my icebergs about Pokémon, there's always early or beta designs. This was also the case for Generation 5, as we got to see Getsy's initial design in which he looks like a bishop, completely out of place for the Pokémon universe, although we can see similar characters in the beta black and white intro from the Terra leak. But what's creepy about this entry is not Getsy's, but Ent's beta design. Judge for yourself. Unown King. This ferocious beast can sleep for centuries. When it wakes up, it kills anything for food. This is the Pokédex entry for the Unown King, a Pokémon that was awakened by the player in a modified version of Pokémon Silver that he allegedly received at night on Christmas Eve when he was home alone. After releasing said Pokémon, the player realizes that the entirety of Kanto and Johto was completely desolated, as no Pokémon or people were present. This was due to the release of the Unown King that had been able to kill every single being in the game, except for the player whom he was waiting at Professor Oak's lab. This level 100 beast was able to defeat Gold's entire party, but instead of finishing the battle, it continued with Gold taking the place of his Pokémon. You can imagine how this ended up for Gold in this creepypasta. Distortion World. One of the first locations in the Pokémon universe is the Distortion World, a place specifically created to hold the renegade Pokémon Giratina due to its violent behavior. It's unknown how long ago the Pokémon universe was made, but call it thousands or billions of years ago, this wasteland has existed since basically the beginning of time. Some say it's the equivalent of hell, but if it were, we might see the souls of other creatures in company of Giratina. However, this is not the case, as it's described as simply a world parallel to the Pokémon world. Giratina has also been compared to the fallen angel, as it rebelled against the Supreme Creator and was banished to a place away from God. A horde of faceless men. It was a dark and stormy night many years ago. Lost, I arrived at this house and went inside. The lights would not turn on, so I fearfully looked around the house. Eventually, I made my way into the kitchen. There was no sign of anyone being there. I found this fridge, and when I opened it, a faint light leaked out. I could finally make out my surroundings, and I saw the faint outline of a man huddling in the corner of the room. I tried to tell him that I was lost, and I was hoping he'd let me stay until morning, but when I approached him, the man suddenly screamed, "Stay back!" I apologized and continued to plead my case. "Please, can't you help me?" "I'm not talking to you," he shouted. I looked at the man in surprise. When I did this, the man asked me, "Can't you see them? Behind you, a horde of faceless men." Request 82. Request 82 reminds us of a text found in Canalive library related to humans marrying Pokémon, at least in the Japanese version, but in a creepier way. The player is asked to go in search of a lost village. Although they don't find any traces, there's a diary that tells the story of how a man fell in love with an unknown creature that told him not to speak about their meeting. The entity disappeared, and many years went by until he finally got married. One day, he decided to tell his wife about the incident, as in some way she reminded him of the creature. When his wife heard that, she revealed that she had been the spirit that he met that night many years ago. Given that the last part of the diary is dropped by a Frostlass Wii battle, it is theorized that the man of the story married this Pokémon. Further evidence is found in the fact that Frostlass is based on the Yuki-onna, a snow spirit from Japanese folklore whose story unfolds in the same fashion as the events told in the diary. Twinleaf Town's Odd Keystone. Nobody would ever think that a cursed item like an odd keystone would be lying in the lake in Twinleaf Town. What I think makes this entry creepy is the fact that Twinleaf Town gives us a sense of peace, a sense of being at home. Crucified Gym Leaders. In the Western version of the Pokémon Adventures manga, we can see some of the Unova gym leaders captured by Team Plasma in Ent's castle. They appear tied to some poles and in pain, but this is nothing compared to what they did to them in the Japanese version. Crucifixion is an extremely painful method of torture, and passing away might generate from difficulties in breathing. This is precisely the way in which Gastly keeps the gym leaders captive. Of course, this had to be toned down, not only because it's possible reference to Christian religion, but also due to the harsh nature of this torture. I think Gastly has been seen to be one of the cruelest villains in all of Pokémon, and the only one to tackle an 11-year-old girl right before threatening the player's life in Pokémon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Hell Bell. This creepypasta talks about a girl who traded a Rayquaza for a shiny Bronzong in Pokémon Pearl. Shortly after, things took a turn for the worse as she followed the instructions attached in a letter this Pokémon was holding. They took her to the Lost Tower where she found a mysterious man that happened to be Hellbell's owner. This creepypasta ends with the girl writing her real name as asked by the old man. Supposedly in this way, the girl sold her soul to this man and her life was never the same again. Pokémon 731. Unit 731 was a secret biological and chemical warfare research and development unit of the Imperial Japanese Army during World War II. The experiments carried out in that place surpass in atrocity those of Germany during that time, and apparently somebody at GameFreak had interest in turning children into soldiers that would aid in the creation of a new Japanese empire. By combining pictures related to said unit and by modifying the Lavender Town music, children would grow to take revenge on the US. Although this is just a creepypasta, what's scary is that Unit 731 was completely real, and the records that survived show that the boundaries of human cruelty can always be trespassed. Dead Regis. If you've ever wondered how a Pokémon like the Regis trio would decay with the pass of time or due to the apocalypse, just look at the dead Regis trio from the ROM hack Pokémon Clover. I'm not sure how this Pokémon ended up in this state, but I find their Pokédex entries eerie to say the least. Regirust. Ravaged by extreme oxidation, it has lost most of its limbs and has limited mobility unless provoked. Regiroad. No matter how hard it tries to repair itself using various stones to become whole again, it cannot stay together. Regimelt. Exposure to intense heat has destroyed its body and raised its temperature to a lethal level. If you thought the Regis are creepy as they are, think again. National Tragedies. We know that from Generation 4 onwards, some dates will have certain effects in the game, such as Diamond Dust that occurs in Junichi Masuda's birthday. However, in source code leaks from 2020, it was discovered that several dates affect the encounter rate of some Pokémon. Some of them are the 6th and 9th of August, dates in which encounter rates decrease by 10%. What are these dates about? The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Dr. Fuji's tragic story. It's not clear if Mr. Fuji from the main series games and Dr. Fuji from the anime are the same person. Both share the story of being the ones responsible for using Mew's DNA to create the most powerful Pokémon. However, Dr. Fuji from the anime has a really tragic story. He was married and had a daughter named Amber. Unfortunately, one day there was an accident, and Amber tragically passed away. This drove Fuji into finding a way to resurrect her daughter, but the most he achieved was to preserve Amber's soul in a container. On top of everything, his wife couldn't bear his obsession with their deceased daughter and decided to leave. Desperate to find a way to successfully bring her back, he accepted Giovanni's funds to make his wishes come true, so long as he would be able to create the most powerful Pokémon for Team Rocket's boss. He launched an expedition for a Mew fossil, and along with Amber and 3 more Pokémon, he was able to clone them. But things wouldn't be easy, as nobody knew if these subjects were strong enough to survive the process. Sadly, the uncut story of Mewtwo's origin ends with Amber disappearing, as only the clone of the mythical Pokémon was able to survive. Dr. Fuji asks the team to administer a serum to Mewtwo in order for him to forget this traumatic experience. After losing his daughter and his wife, his only success was to create Mewtwo. However, due to Mewtwo's power, he meets his end at the hands of his own creation. Spaceman. This is one of the most mysterious events, and it happens in Pokemon Sun and Moon in Haina Desert. After becoming the champion, you'll find a man that suffers from amnesia, but if you show him a Solrock or Lunaton, he'll remember everything that happened. He'll mention that he encountered your Pokemon 30 years ago, and that the star pulses it bestow upon him have been passed down to a group of wonderful men. These men are likely the old guys that give the player all powers in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and that are looking for somebody to pass their powers to. Once they do, they will perform a ritual in which they'll start disappearing one by one, as they grant their powers to the powerless man who will later become Mr. Bonding. Strange House. An everlasting dark dream, an endless dream of darkness. Dad, Mom, Abra, where are you? In the dark dream, I heard my dad's voice. Forget about the lunar wing. Please, stay here with me. These are the words spoken by a ghost girl in the strange house located at the base of Reversal Mountain in Pokemon Black 2 and White 2. The girl in question is the one that can be found on the Marvelous Bridge and that vanishes in broad daylight. Going by what she says, it is suggested that the girl fell victim to Darkrai's nightmares. Her parents tried to find a way to wake her up, judging by the amount of dream-related books in the house, only to later find that Cresselia's lunar wing was the only way to bring her back. However, by the time her parents found said item, which is actually present in the house, it was too late for the girl. As I stated in my other icebergs, it is clear that Darkrai posed as her father when the girl mentions that she heard her dad's voice asking her to forget about the lunar wing and stay with him. Trainer's School. In Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, the player can speak to a youngster on Big Wave Beach that will tell them about something weird going on at the trainer's school. Once there, you will find a little girl that will ask you to solve 7 mysteries. While the tasks apparently involve the paranormal at the beginning, once completed, they have a perfectly reasonable explanation except for one. It turns out that once completed, a security officer will call out to the player, questioning why they are at school at night. The girl is suddenly gone, and the officer tells the player that they were alone the whole time. Space World 97 Demo. When I talk about the Space World 97 demo, I can't help but think of parallel world stories that could have been but never happened. The name Silent Hill evokes memories of the homonymous survival horror game, a name it shares with the protagonist town. There's something unsettling about the colors in the prototype. They seem oddly out of place even for the Pokemon world. The greens and oranges give the game a foreign, almost alien appearance, as if it belonged to a different realm. The ruins of all we know are eerie, but they pale in comparison to those in the prototype if rumors about it are true. The structure you're looking at is said to represent the Atomic Bomb Dome, one of the few buildings that survived the bombing of Hiroshima. In real life, this location has the sea to the south, much like the layout of this map. Additionally, the bridge mirrors the Aoi Bridge, which was used as a reference point for the attack. The unknown on the walls are thought to symbolize the shadows left by the vaporized bodies of the victims due to the atomic explosion. However, the fact that the unknown represent letters of the Latin alphabet could be interpreted as a symbol of the USA's victory over Japan. Erika is a ghost gym leader. Lavender Town is the first place we come across besides Pallet Town that doesn't have a gym. Nonetheless, this place was planned to have a gym leader according to some of the leaks of Gen 1, and that was none other than Erika, the grass gym leader. Erika's original design shows her levitating a Pokeball, which gives her a supernatural vibe. A yukata is a traditional Japanese garment that is generally wrapped left side over right. Why is this important? Because Erika's original sprite has her yukata wrapped right side over left, a way to dress a deceased person for burial. Trapped in another dimension. It's unsettling to be lost, but have you ever imagined to be lost in a place where you know you'll never come back? This is the case of a young boy who disappeared more than 50 years ago in the Alola region. We know this because a woman on Iki Town tells how her brother disappeared without a trace, but also from a letter in a bottle the player finds on Kalae Bay. It reads the following. To the person who finds this letter, if you're reading this letter, please find a way to deliver it to my little sister. She lives in Iki Town on Mele Mele Island. This place where I am now is really weird and looks unbelievable, but all of the people here have been really nice, so I'm okay. I hope I'll see you again someday. Be safe. Your big brother. My theory is that the boy could have fallen into an ultra wormhole many years ago, and although he was unable to make it home himself, he managed to send this letter. What's strange is the way he describes the place he's trapped in. It doesn't really sound as if he ended up in another region, but more like an alien place like the ones we saw on the other side of the ultra wormholes. It's possible that he might have ended up in Ultra Megalopolis, as it fits the description of a weird place with nice people, being those members of the Ultra Recon squad. Teleport goes wrong. Teleport was a quite useful technique in the absence of fly, as it would allow trainers to escape a cave, for example, and go back to the safety of home or a Pokémon Center. But what happens if you don't master this technique properly? This is the case of a psychic by the name of Jacqueline in Pokémon Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald. She has an Abra and can be found near the cycling road, but what's interesting is that she can be found again in a completely different region, more specifically on Island 6 near the Green Path in the Kanto region. Apparently something went really wrong, as she mentions that she had envisioned her house while teleporting, but instead she ended up in that place. As you can see, teleport can be extremely dangerous, as if you don't have enough skill, who knows where you might end up. Lavender Town missing frequencies. A video on YouTube popped up in late 2000 about missing frequencies in the Lavender Town theme, and that through spectrogram analysis it would display secret messages. Here's the video. As you can see, Ghost from Lavender Town can be seen along with some unknown saying "get out" and another message blurred. Of course, this is another creepypasta. Screaming Pikachu glitch. The Screaming Pikachu glitch was discovered back in 2009 by a user called McLover209. I couldn't find any information on how to do it, but what happens is that when Professor Oak is supposed to find Pikachu in the wild, it will encounter a glitch Pokémon that will cause the game sounds to glitch out. It's called the Screaming Pikachu glitch because you'll hear Pikachu's voice hidden in the glitchy sounds if you pay close attention. The XY Files. One of my favorite entries has to be the XY Files, as it is a story that is said could have taken place instead of the events of Pokemon X and Y. We'll see if the Terrally confirms this. Seeing that humans were a violent species due to their constant wars, a group of aliens known as Team Flare sent AZ to destroy Earth, but something would have gone wrong with the spaceship and would crash land on the planet. There, he would meet a Floette that would change his mind about destroying the planet. This Pokemon would become the holder of the key that Team Flare would have given AZ to destroy the planet, and that came in the shape of a flower, the same one that the unreleased Eternal Flower Floette would use to perform the also unreleased move Light of Ruin, the most powerful fairy attack in existence. The members of Team Flare were similar to the Men in Black, trying to blend in among humans to accomplish their mission. Nonetheless, they would be forced to find another power source in order to destroy the planet, as they would be unable to find AZ and the destruction device. This would be found in the Pokemon Xerneas and Yveltal. It would be discovered that all fairy Pokemon had a common origin in the moon, and that Diantha would be the leader of all fairy Pokemon that she would take care after. The gym leader we currently know as Valerie has an alien-like design because she was supposed to be Diantha, leader of the Moon Pokémon, but that was later repurposed as a fairy gym leader whose alien-like eyes are the result of wearing contact lenses. Mega evolution would occur due to radiation present in AC's spaceship fragments that scattered all across Kalos. With the upcoming release of Pokémon Legends Z2A, there's a chance that this information provided by leaker XY Sider gets confirmed, fully or partially. But despite this game having been announced quite a while ago, not too much is known about what its story is gonna be about. The Dark Fate of the Pokémon Friends. One day, Pikachu, Pyukumuku and Slowpoke were busily readying their things to set out on their island challenge. Hey, what do you guys think we should bring with us when we set out? With a good stock of items to keep them well, the trio was finally ready to set out on their island challenge. Their preparations were a great success. When you're out on your island challenge, gentle reader, perhaps you will see this plucky trio somewhere and smile. Greater Mobile Holdings on Ethical Projects. This company was responsible for creating Mobile City in the Hoenn region, but it also had two more projects, New Mobile and Sea Mobile. If you go to Sea Mobile, you can find a confidential document that describes how this company spied on the Devon Corporation, a company that powered its technology using infinity energy from the Ultimate Weapon. It's unknown how the Devon Corporation got its hands on the Ultimate Weapon, but it's true that they used this for the good of humankind. Nonetheless, Greater Mobile Holdings didn't share this point of view. In fact, while creating the underground city that was meant to be New Mobile, they discovered that the place started serving as a habitat for wild Pokémon. Watson, the electric gym leader, was part of this company. However, he couldn't turn a blind eye at the fact that the company didn't care about the wild Pokémon and revealed what was going on, forcing them to stop the project. In an attempt to give it one last shot, the company founded Sea Mobile with the purpose of extracting energy from the ocean floor. However, the energy they were getting was insufficient to compete against Devon and their infinity energy. The company was willing to find a way to create their own infinity energy, and it is well known where this energy comes from, that is, from the lives of Pokémon. Once again, Watson, a person that was deemed a traitor to the company, stepped in once and for all and spoke about what they were trying to do. As I mentioned in my creepy and mysterious locations Iceberg, it's such an irony that the company that disregarded the well-being of wild Pokémon for money unintentionally created two of the biggest habitats for wild Pokémon, being those New Mobile and Sea Mobile. The Trainer of Death. The Trainer of Death refers to a trainer that results from performing the SAS glitch, a trainer that has red sprite and that changes whatever Pokémon the player has in their first, second, fourth and fifth slot into a level 153 Bulbasaur with Explosion. If you wonder why the trainer is called that, that's because there are two things that make it deadly. The first one is that the player's OT gets corrupted and the Bulbasaur you have in your team will be considered outsiders. Taking their level into account, not even the Earth Badge is capable of making outsider Pokémon obey you, therefore making them prone to use Explosion most of the times. You might think that Explosion coming from a high level Pokémon would defeat the opponent, but this is when the second problem takes place. The other trainer's Pokémon happen to have an extremely long HP bar that is almost impossible to exhaust, meaning that with the two problems I talked about, you'll end up facing an unwinnable battle. On top of everything, every single trainer in the entire game, when faced, will turn into the Trainer of Death. Takeshi Shudo's ending. If Takeshi Shudo were to turn into a Pokémon character, that would be N. Let me explain why. One of the final notes he left before he passed away stated that if he had to choose how the Pokémon anime would end, that would have been in a fourth Pokémon movie, where Pokémon realize that they're being treated like slaves and rebel against humanity with Ash's Pikachu as the leader. He explained that it would have been a definitive ending with no point of return, as it would have killed the idea that Pokémon and humans are friends. As you know, N's idea was to free Pokémon from their trainers and live independently, something that didn't happen because in the end, Pokémon willingly choose to be with their trainers. Worth 1000 Pokémon pictures. I'm not sure if anyone here remembers Worth 1000, but it was a website where people uploaded manipulated pictures of any topic, and that included Pokémon. People tried to make realistic Pokémon, and I think one of the most popular ones was a picture of Cuban, but there were others and some extremely creepy. I tried to find a picture of a coffin with human eyes that was circulating on the internet, but I couldn't. Here are some of the ones I remember from the early 2000s. Black Fog. The controversial Pokémon manga, The Electric Tale of Pikachu, has one of the most disturbing Pokémon in the history of the franchise. That Pokémon is an ancient giant hunter that is known for considering itself a god, given that in the past Pokémon were worshipped as divinities by humans. This horrifying Pokémon has ended the lives of both Pokémon and humans, and is not willing to be captured by anyone due to its arrogant and prideful personality. Its hatred for others is such that before there's a possibility to be caught, it decided to use self-destruct and end its own existence. Without a doubt, one of the most disturbing Pokémon. Half-human Typhlosion. Long ago, when the boundary between Pokémon and humans was unclear, there was a village somewhere. One day, a girl from that village went into the mountains to gather firewood. She found well-dried deadwood deep in the forest, so she kept going further in. Before she realized it, the sun was setting, and she had lost her way, which made the girl anxious. Just then, a man appeared from the other side of the forest. His face didn't resemble anyone from the village, but he was very handsome. The man said, "You must be lost, right? I know the way down the mountain, but with your pace, it would be midnight before we get there. I'll take you back tomorrow morning, so why don't you rest at my place tonight?" The girl had no choice but to agree to the man's suggestion. The man took her hand and began to walk. As evening fell, they arrived at a large cave. "This is my home. You must be hungry, right? Wait here." Saying that, the man went outside the cave. After he left, a red light shone from far away in the mountains, and there was the sound of trees swaying. Before long, the man returned carrying many red berries. He said, "Eat this, then let's sleep for the night. Even if you wake up before I do, don't look at my face." The next morning, when the girl woke up, the man was still asleep. She honored her promise and stayed lying down, waiting. Before long, she fell back asleep. She was awakened by the man's voice. When she looked outside, the sun was already setting. "Today, we'll eat green berries. Wait here." With that, he went out of the cave. After he left, the same red light shone from far away, and the sound of trees swaying echoed once more. By the time the sun had set completely, the man returned, carrying many green berries. He said, "Eat this, then let's sleep for the night. Even if you wake up before I do, don't look at my face." The girl expressed her concern that her family would be worried and that she wanted to go home soon. The man yawned widely and tapped her on the head. At that moment, she completely forgot about her family and home. The two of them ate the green berries together and then fell asleep. The same routine continued, with them waking up when the sun had set, the man going out to gather berries, and the two of them eating and sleeping together. Eventually, the girl realized that the man was a Typhlosion. As winter approached, the Typhlosion dug deeper into the cave and said to the girl, "Go and gather wood for firewood. Break off the branches from the higher parts of tall trees." The girl tried to do as the Typhlosion instructed, but the tall trees scared her, so she could only climb the shorter ones. When she brought back some branches, the Typhlosion said, "That won't do. If it's not from higher branches, humans will find us." When the snow began to fall, the two of them lived in the depths of the cave, mostly sleeping. There was plenty of food. Occasionally, they would wake up, eat, and then go back to sleep. After several days and nights passed, the Typhlosion said, "Your father is looking for you, but you are my wife, so I can't return you. I will have to fight him." The girl pleaded, "Please don't do that. Don't kill my father. How can I live with you if you kill my family? You're a good person, so please stay here with me and sleep." "Alright, let's stay here and sleep." The man nodded. The next night, the Typhlosion woke the girl and said, "Your father is close by, go and see." When the girl went outside, a snowstorm was raging. She climbed a low tree and broke off a branch. When she returned to the cave, the Typhlosion was singing a song she had never heard before. "You broke off a branch, didn't you? Soon your father will come here. I am going to do something bad to your father. If I am killed, take my eyes, my voice, and my heart. Build a fire at the spot where I was killed and burn them. And while they burn, sing this song until the fire goes out." The girl said, "Please don't do it. Don't kill my father. If anyone is to be killed, let it be you. Goodbye. We will never meet again." With those words, the Typhlosion went outside. After a while, there was a loud noise, and when the girl looked outside, she saw her father had killed the Typhlosion. She rushed out and said to her father, "Father, you have killed my husband. I have been living with him all this time. He was my husband. Please, give me my husband." The Typhlosion's eyes, voice, and heart. The girl built a fire at the place where the Typhlosion had been killed and put his eyes, voice, and heart into the flames. She sang the song the Typhlosion had taught her until the fire burned out. The girl's father built a small hut on the edge of the village for the girl and her child to live in. Eventually spring arrived. The young men of the village often teased and tormented the girl and her child. It became worse over time, and one day they tried to drape a Typhlosion's pelt over them. The girl returned home and pleaded with her parents, "Please tell the villagers to stop teasing us. If they put that pelt on us, we will surely become Typhlosion. We are already half Typhlosion as it is." Despite the parents' pleas, the villagers didn't listen. In fact, they found it even more amusing and eventually draped the Typhlosion pelt over the girl and her child. At that moment, they howled loudly and vanished into the depths of the forest. The two were never seen again, and so people came to understand Typhlosion are half human beings. Tempting tentacles. In a coastal village, there was a man. One day, as he was walking along the shore, he found a female octillery washed up on the beach. The man had with the octillery and then threw it back into the sea. The next day, he went to the same spot and found the same octillery again. He once more had with it and threw it back into the sea as before. One night, after several days had passed, the man had a dream. In the dream, the octillery spoke to him. "I cannot come to you, but I will deliver our child to you. It's our child, yours and mine." The next morning, the man went out to the place where he had met the octillery. There, he found a boy. The man took the boy home and raised him. Time passed, the boy grew into a young man, and the father passed away. Rapidash's mane. There was a grassy plain and a large lake at the foot of the mountain. Two men lived on the west and east sides of the lake. The two men lived by hunting Pokémon. The man living in the west was not particularly skilled, but he strictly followed the hunting rules. The man living in the east was a skilled hunter, but often neglected these rules. One day, the man from the west went out to hunt and saw a Rapidash on the plain. Its lush mane shone beautifully in the sunlight. As the man from the west readied his bow, the Rapidash spoke. "We have children now. If I die, there will be none of us left in this plain." The man from the west lowered his bow and said, "Then I will not kill you. However, I desire your beautiful mane, so I ask you to become my wife." The Rapidash became the wife of the man from the west. After about 2 months, when Ponyta began to appear on the plains, the man from the west was riding on the back of his wife, the Rapidash, running across the plain. Eventually they reached a place where many Rapidash and Ponyta were resting. The wife said, "They are my husbands. If you need, you may hunt them. If you treat them with care, they will not die. However, Do not kill the female Rapidash or the Ponyta. The female Rapidash are my sisters, and the Ponyta are my children. That means the female Rapidash are your sisters-in-law, and the Ponyta are like your children. A few days later, the man from the east went out hunting. When he reached the plains, he found a Ponyta. He immediately shot an arrow and killed it. As he continued looking for more prey, he encountered a Rapidash. It was a female Rapidash. The Rapidash tried to say something, but the man from the east ignored it and shot his arrow. He then cut off the mane of the Rapidash he had killed, and proud of the beautiful mane, decided to show it off to the man from the west. He wrapped the mane around his head and headed home. Eventually tired of walking, the man from the east decided to rest under a large tree by the lake. As the man from the west and his wife, the Rapidash, walked along the lake shore, they saw a glimpse of the Rapidash's mane under the shadow of the big tree. He is male, he has no children, so if you need, you may hunt him, said the wife. With that, the man shot an arrow at the Rapidash. When he approached the prey, he found the man from the east lying there, wrapped in the Rapidash's mane. Take this mane back with you, and when you hunt a Rapidash, follow the rules I have told you. With those words, the Rapidash said farewell to the man from the west and returned to the plains. Slakoth slaying. There was a woman and her companions. Every day they were bored, so they would often catch Slakoth living in a nearby forest. They played cruel games with the captured Slakoth, sometimes killing them for fun, gouging out their eyes, or cutting off their ears. One day, the woman was walking alone in the forest and saw a Slakoth hanging from a tree. She climbed the tree to catch it, but slipped and injured herself. At that moment, a Vigoroth appeared. The Vigoroth had a torn ear. The woman, startled, tried to flee, but her injured leg hurt too much and she couldn't move. The Vigoroth with the torn ear suddenly attacked her when it saw her. The woman lost consciousness. When she awoke, she was in an unfamiliar place. Before her lay a clear lake, surrounded by trees from which many Slakoth and Vigoroth were hanging. All the Pokémon bore wounds somewhere on their bodies, marks left by the woman and her companions. Upon closer inspection, she noticed that some of the Slakoth hanging from the trees were corpses. They were the very Slakoth that the woman and her friends had killed and discarded. The Slakoth were throwing those corpses into the lake. The woman tried to run away, but a Slaking appeared. This Slaking also had a torn ear. The woman realized that this was the same Vigoroth she had seen earlier, and fear overwhelmed her, causing her to faint once more. When the woman regained consciousness, she found herself at the entrance of the forest near her home, surrounded by her friends. They carried her back to her house. Sometime later, the woman gave birth to a child, but it wasn't a human child, it was a Slakoth. She intended to abandon it, but couldn't bring herself to do so. She stopped meeting with her friends and decided to raise the Slakoth. One day, her friends, concerned about her, visited the area near her home. They found the Slakoth sleeping there, the child of the woman. As they always did, they caught the Slakoth in the chest and killed it. They took its corpse and headed to the woman's house. When she saw the slain Slakoth, the woman was overwhelmed with sorrow. She grabbed the Slakoth's body and ran deep into the forest. Her friends, shocked, chased after her. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the surroundings suddenly opened up, and they found the same clear lake from before. Around the lake were many Slakoth and Vigoroth. The woman stood before the lake, and holding the lifeless body of the Slakoth, she threw herself into the water. Afterwards, the woman's friends began to treat Slakoth as companions, just as she had in her final moments. Female symbol glitch. I regret I hadn't heard about this glitch before I made my Gen 1 Pokémon glitches Iceberg, but now it's the opportunity to explore it. This glitch happens if you perform the Mew glitch with a Pokémon with a special of 193. The female symbol glitch overflows the decompression buffers and corrupts the parts of the game's memory responsible for sound. And no wonder, as the main feature of this glitch is the creepy sounds the game produces and that it can lock up your game. Take a listen to an example by user The Last Utopia. Cries from Hell. The entry you're about to see didn't make it into my English Pokemon Red, Blue and Yellow Iceberg because I didn't know about it back then, and apparently not too many people know about it. We know Pikachu's voice was included in Pokemon Yellow, while other Pokemon kept their normal cries. The leak source code for Pokemon Yellow contains Japanese voices for many Pokemon, which wouldn't be in the depths of this iceberg if it weren't for the severe limitations of the Game Boy. All I can say is that GameFreak made the best decision by not including these sounds, especially considering that many children play the game at night. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing to the alternate channel, The Iceberg Experience. You'll find a lot of non-Pokemon icebergs, and also subscribe to this channel if you enjoy icebergs and Pokemon content. See you in the next one.